Welcome to Freedom Cast, where your hosts, Jordan and Miranda, show you how to get just a little bit more out of life. Are you ready to leave normal behind?
Welcome, Freedom Casters. Today we have an awesome episode planned for you guys. We are interviewing Jenny Moates. She just recently wrote a book called 50 Coffees. We wanted to have her on and talk about that. We also met her in CG, like a lot of our other guests, and CG, again, is Camp Gladiator. But she's a really awesome, really cool person. We talk about coffee, faith, business, and all of the sorts. So we are excited for this episode, and we are happy that you are here with us. Give it a listen, and then let us know what you think. All right, Jenny, thank you so much for coming on Freedom Cast. Miranda and I are so happy to have you on our show. Thank you for taking time. We're recording this on a Tuesday morning. Super awesome that you're able to come on this show with us. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. We love having people on the show and talking about different things. It's just fun and exciting for us. So if you just want to start, just tell us a little bit about yourself. We always ask people how they know us, and the answer always seems to be through CG. And I think your thing's going to be very similar to a lot of our other guests.
Oh no, I'm right there. No, yes, I was blessed to meet you guys at Camp Gladiator. So I think where we met was sort of where we were killing ourselves over burpees and some insane exercise, doing the
I will
crazy.
never like burpees ever.
I will never.
I just hate them.
No, and 100 of them is it's just torture. But yeah, so that's how we met. And then just a little bit about me. So I'm a mom of 3 pretty awesome and crazy kids, and they range in age from 13 to 7, and also a wife, and love being married, and then I own a business. I own a branding and design firm, and have for I think 15 years now. I can't do the math, but yeah. So
you have your hands full, pretty much.
Yeah, my plate is full, but my cup runneth over. So I am very blessed. Yeah.
Awesome, Jenny. So can you just give us, maybe if you want to just share some things you like to do for fun?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amazon shopping, for sure. That's like on my list. But no, we love to take weekend trips. I'm a huge antique person. I like to just spend hours walking through and looking at old stuff, and seeing what kind of treasures I can find. That's my happy place. And then, I'm a little bit of a foodie. I like to eat and drink good wine. And so this is why I need Camp Gladiator, just to be able to work all that off. So.
Oh, yes. We're very much the same. That's kind of partly why we do it, because we love to eat different foods, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I mean, and Brian and I, my husband, we're the same way. We love it. So it's a little dangerous at times, but with balance, it's good. So.
It's just so much fun to try new stuff, because I was always picky, super picky eater when I was growing up, and now I'll try anything. I'll try pretty much any food and anyone puts in front of me, just because I think I relish those new experiences. Now, of course, I still have my favorites that are not so good for me, like pizza and that stuff, but I like trying new stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. No, and it's funny because my husband was the same way, and he'll tell you, he's like, oh yeah, I eat so much more now because of Jenny, because, when we were first married, I'm like, okay, well, just try sushi and see what you think about it. So yeah, he branches out a whole lot more these days. So it's great.
That's awesome. I love sushi as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you actually just recently wrote a book, which we think is awesome. And I'm in the process of reading it right now, and I just think it's great. Could you tell us just a little bit about what the book's about, what inspired you to write it, and just the process of writing it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for reading it. I love that. Never gets old to hear people say, and I think I've only had it out for a couple of weeks now, and I love it. Like every
Yeah.
time, it just makes me feel so good.
Yeah, Jenny, it was really good. I read it. I think I
Aw.
told you maybe like a week ago now, but yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I always am drawn to the cover of books. I love the book cover.
Oh, thank you.
I just loved everything about the book. It was concise. It talked about that. You had a chapter about anti-networking. I'll let you talk about
Mhm.
it, but it's just so cool.
Yeah.
We were so
No.
excited to have you on the show just to talk about this a little bit more, because I think it's
Oh,
awesome whenever anyone can write a book.
well, thank you. And yeah, thanks about the cover too, because I'm a designer. So, of course, that wasn't something that I could outsource or feel good about anybody else doing. So I think the cover actually I think it took a few months just to kind of land on the right cover and be happy with it and be able to release it without pain. So yeah, that was, that was good. But yeah, so, a little bit about the book. So, 50 Coffees is a book about having coffee with strangers. But really, it's about building community and, ultimately building your business and really, truly, at the end of the day, just enriching your life overall. And kind of what started the book was in 2012, I had come out of what I now call my survival bubble because I had an 18-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-year-old at the time. And, I was running a business and just trying to keep my head above water. I had a lot going on, obviously. And I didn't, and I sat at the kitchen table one morning in January. It was actually my daughter's birthday. And we were sitting there and I had, this little boy on my lap who's 18 months old, and he's eating Cheerios, and I'm sitting there having my coffee and half awake. And I just, I had this realization that I didn't really know that many people in Charlotte. My business was kind of stagnant. And my husband knew a lot of folks in Charlotte. His job kind of required him to make new connections all the time. And so he was having coffee with lots of different people. And he's just a relationship guy. And in fact, he had always kind of found new relationships for my company in the past and been a big part of that. But, I just looked at him and I said, hey, how can I meet more people in Charlotte? I've got to work on my business and I've got to do something a little different. And he just said, you just need to have coffee with people. And, that's a really simple statement, but to me, it sounded like you just need to go slide down razors, and,
Yeah.
because to me, I'm not necessarily the most. I love people, and so much more today than ever. But I'm a little bit. I like my bubbles. I like to be comfortable. I'm a little more of an introvert than I am probably an extrovert, and so.
You're talking to people, Jenny, that are very, very similar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you guys are a lot like that. So you understand. And so, but you know what? I think a lot of people are like that, believe it or not. I think it's actually more rare when you have people that love to be extroverted. And so I just looked at him like, well, how in the world do you do that? I'm just supposed to have coffee with people I've never met before. Yeah. And so I actually thought about it and I thought, he's probably right. And how hard could that be? But I also know myself. And so I knew that if I didn't set a goal to do it, I would never do it. And I would just be a great idea. And I never did it. And then, so I said, you know what, I'm going to have 50 coffees this year. And it was, like I said, it was early January. And I said, I'm going to have 50 coffees with 50 people this year, one a week, except Christmas and Thanksgiving weeks. And that seemed like a pretty doable goal at the time. It was just one a coffee a week. I'm like, how hard could that be? So anyway, I think, what started out as more of a personal goal, and what kind of got me writing the book was that I was about 4 months into my coffees and, doing pretty well, keeping on track and that sort of thing and meeting a lot of different people. And I started to really realize how much it was helping me. And how, gosh, there's a lot to be learned here. And so I started taking audio notes of my coffees and just I would get in the car after my coffee and I would just record on my iPhone and just thoughts that I had and things that I learned about people and things I learned about myself and kind of why this is an important thing to do. And that's when it kind of started to become hey, this has book potential. Like this could be something that could really help people if I could just figure out a way to get it out there. So, yeah,
that is so cool. I love how that started. I love like the background of the book. That's just so awesome that it started out as just like a personal goal, and then partway through it was like, hey, this is going well. Like I could write a book about this, and it's just I think those types of books and those types of things are really great because they're so natural. It's not like you were like, well, I'm going to write a book about 50 coffees, so then I have to go do my 50 coffees. It's cool that a book can come out of it like organically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's so cool because I think I do really like it because it is, like Jordan said, we are more introverted, and it is just cool to be like, that is something easy you can do to build more relationships, and we're relatively new to the area, so it's got my wheels turning. So I just think that's really cool.
Good. That's great. Yeah. And it's nice, it's just nice to go sit and have coffee with somebody for an hour, or sometimes 3, depending on the coffee, which I did have a 3-hour long coffee that year.
That's awesome. If you could tell us what the experience was like in writing. I asked this because I've heard countless people say, hey, I'd love to write a book someday, but there's no way I can do that. Like I can't write a book. I don't have time, or I can't get that many words on a page. So if you could just maybe just describe, after that point, after you were like, hey, I could write a book about this, how did it all come together?
Sure. So, well, first of all, the experience for me was pretty life-changing. I mean, my perspective just shifted completely after that year. And I learned a lot about myself and others, and it really stretched me. And it's pretty typical of me to say that I want to do something, but have no earthly idea how I'm going to do it. So I want to do something, and then I'm like, okay, I'll just figure it out. But one of the really cool things about the book, and this is such true statement, is that 50 Coffees is a book, and it's a good book because of my community and the community that I built during that year. I met some really amazing people, and several people in my community I called on and leaned on during the process of writing the book, and really, I mean, community it's a testament to community, the book itself, and the fact that it was written at all, because I'm really not a writer. I mean, I do write some for design and communications and marketing and stuff like that. Never set out to be a writer. And so, the book is definitely a testament to having community around me, because I had some really great people that took first reads, went through and edited, gave me feedback, gave me input. And then ultimately the person that helped me self-publish was a coffee that I had in 2012. And he had gone through the process himself. And I didn't know Jordan at the time. I would have loved to known him then. But I would have helped you out. You would have, and I would have loved that. And I didn't even know till I hit the button that you did that. But yeah, so Brandon was a huge help in that way. And he guided me patiently through the process as we got kind of into that last year of final editing and publishing. So, so the book is totally a testament to community.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to link out to the book in the show notes. But if you just want to give the full title again, just so we can have that'd be awesome.
Sure. The title of the book is 50 Coffees, and the subtitle, How to Build Community and Your Business One Coffee at a Time.
So cool. I love it. One last question regarding the books and writing and all that stuff before we move on. Do you think you're going to continue to write, or was just kind of like, you were writing about an experience? That's kind of what it sounds like, but just was curious if you maybe had any plans to, jump into like 150 coffees or something. I don't know.
No. I think the coffee thing is done and was good. But I could definitely see writing another book. But right now I don't have anything planned, and just similar to 50 coffees, if something comes along that really inspires me and I feel like it could help others, because really that's why I did it. I did it because I felt like, this might really help some folks. And so, if something like that comes along, I definitely go through the process again. But as you know, as a writer and author, it's definitely takes a lot of personal investment, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. So
yeah, it takes a lot of time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But it's worth
And
it.
totally. It is worth it. I actually had one more question about that. I know, so we're going to move on.
Oh,
but
you're good.
No,
We're
that's
good.
okay. That's okay.
I was curious how the process you had of finding people to go to coffee with, and if you ever hit a point, like coffee 25, where you're like, who am I going to ask now? Or did it kind of just domino effect where all of a sudden you just had all these coffees lined up? Or just, I was curious about that process.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I was kind of asking myself that question in the very beginning, like, how am I going to do this? Ironically, the first coffee came to me, which was kind of funny because it was that same morning that I had this sort of aha moment, what I call my caffeinated awakening. And I had gone into my office and my voicemail light was blinking, and it happened to be a guy that knew me indirectly through somebody else. And he said, "Hey, I'd really like to get to know more people in Charlotte. Could you have coffee?" And I thought, okay, this is God's plan. Like, I have to do this.
that is a definite sign.
Yeah. When the light is blinking, it's a sign. But so that one kind of came to me, but it wasn't that hard to, people were really generous. I had one coffee guy that I really like and respect a whole lot. He basically opened up his Rolodex and was like, "Who do you want to meet?" And, I just kind of asked the question, "Hey, I'm trying to get to know more people in the business community. Is there anybody that would benefit from knowing me? Now that you know what I do as a graphic designer and branding person, or, is there somebody that you think I should meet or get to know?" And gosh, people were so generous, and I had so many, every coffee was pretty much a referral from somebody else. And it was, it's funny. I never wanted to get, there were so many times when I was so challenged to be intentional about this, that I just wanted to be like, do I really have to do 50? Like, isn't 22 enough coffees this year? But I knew that I had set this goal, and I knew that this was something bigger. I just didn't know what. And so I just kind of kept plugging away at it. But it was a little bit of a domino effect, but there were some lulls, and I can honestly say that there was not one coffee per week. In fact, some weeks there was two, and some weeks there was none. And it just really depended on who I could meet with and when I could do it, so.
No, that's really cool advice, Jenny, because Miranda and I have been talking like, okay, who else can we have in our podcast? So that's actually a perfect recommendation for us, because I didn't even think to ask past guests, hey, who do you think we should have on here? We've just been kind of brainstorming with each other. We haven't really asked other people for recommendations. So I think that's definitely something that we can brainstorm going forward. I hadn't even thought about that. So that's cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I find that, if you particularly like someone or you respect someone, more than likely you'll probably like the person that they refer. So, yeah, definitely.
All right. So who else should we have in the podcast? You can call them out. Just kidding.
I need to give that some thought, but I will definitely send you something. That'll be my homework.
All right. Sounds good. So thank you for talking about the book, Jenny. We'll move on from there, but super excited. I'll put that in the show notes that people can check that out and hopefully read it, buy it, write a review for you. That would be awesome. I know that is writing a review for an author is super helpful. So if you're reading this or if you're listening to this, podcast listener and you want to support Jenny with her book, go to Amazon, grab it, and then write her a quick review. That is monumental for authors. So thank you so much for doing that. Jenny, what is it that you do for a living? I know you spoke about it briefly when we were talking about the book, but if you just want to talk about that, maybe how you got into it, just give us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the most lucky people on the planet because I get to do what I love for a living. I am a brand strategist and graphic designer, and it sounds a lot more interesting than it is. I get to color for a living, so that's kind of what I do. But I really, essentially, my branding firm called Moving Ideas, we help our clients. Typically we work with marketing folks like in larger organizations. We help them develop things like, print collateral, direct marketing, video, digital communications, web, that kind of stuff. We work with some pretty large bank brands that you probably know of here in the Charlotte area. But we also work with some smaller mid-sized companies and in many different industries. And our passion is around communication and positioning and helping companies achieve marketing goals as it relates to, what's put out into the market for consumers. So, and I love it. And I'm thankful, that it doesn't really feel like work. Which I know not everybody has that. So I
feel like that's the best kind of work.
Oh, it is. And, I feel like, this is what my mom always said, if you do something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So it's definitely true. Definitely.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into that, that'd be awesome.
So the business is going great, especially since 50 Coffees. That really, truly just kicked our business into a different level of getting to know so many new people. And I have an amazing business partner, and she happens to be one of my oldest friends. I think we've been friends for 30 some years. And we actually started working together at the Gap in high school. So if that tells you like how long we've known each other. But she's awesome. And she actually is a writer, believe it or not. She's a journalism major, and she'd helped me edit quite a bit in my book, made me sound legitimate. But what kind of inspired me to start the agency was I had this vision of myself, and I was probably in my early 30s, and I saw myself just sitting outside on some sports bleachers, and I'm watching my child's practice, whatever that is. And I was working away on a laptop in the sunshine, and I just had this vision, and I could picture that so clearly. And just the freedom and the flexibility to be a mom. And I didn't have kids at the time, and pursue my passion for design. And that became sort of a dream. And it sounds kind of corny, but it really drove me. And I happened to be an account exec at the time for an agency in Atlanta. And my boss had this wooden sign on her shelf, and it said, "Live the life you've imagined," which is, Thoreau's quote. And that did it. That stuck with me. And I started making plans. And
you saw the sign and then you walked in and quit.
I thought about it. I really did. I did give it a little time. I was kind of practical.
Well, that's good.
And it sounds like such a simple thing. You have a vision and you see a sign, and then, it sounds simple, but it's so true. And here we are, 16 years later, and I'm definitely living what I had imagined back then. It's truly amazing what your mind can convince you of if you're just willing to kind of listen to it, So it was neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it seems like you are very much an entrepreneur, but if you want to give me your thoughts on entrepreneurial lifestyle versus, traditional 9 to 5 job lifestyle, we talk about it a lot on this show. I usually bring it up just because it's something I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just people, in all walks of life that do different things. And I love to just hear what people think about that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely an entrepreneur now. And I was, when I started the business, it took a little bit of a risk. My husband actually is as well. He's a big entrepreneur. He's actually more of a risk taker than me, former race car driver. But
oh, wow, that's awesome.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he used to race since he was 10, but he's actually more the risk taker, and he kind of pushed me to doing my own thing. But it's funny because he actually works for a company out of Detroit, and he supports a major automotive manufacturer and loves what he does. And I guess my perspective is that being an entrepreneur is wonderful, and there's so much benefit from that. But again, it just kind of comes back to what are you passionate about? Because I think my husband is really successful working for this company because he loves what he's doing, and he's really passionate about what he's doing there. And so, I think it's a niche it just really depends on you, and it really depends on what you want. And for me, it definitely created the lifestyle I needed and wanted for my life and raising kids. But, I don't know, maybe in 10 years, I'll be a consultant and I'll go work within companies or, do something different. Yeah, I think it's great. I think both have its advantages. It's just kind of, what do you want?
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because that's kind of been more of my viewpoint now that I've been talking to different people, is that just like, it's either one's okay. It's okay. As long as you're following your passion and you're trying to get into something that you really enjoy, or It's a job where we interviewed one of my friends, Brandon, on one of our podcasts, and he has a job, but he has a lot of hobbies that he is really into, and the job is kind of there to allow him to do those hobbies and to spend a lot of time, doing hobbies that don't necessarily bring in any money and that cost money to do. So it's just cool getting different perspectives on that. And we love talking about that on this show, just because, it's living a little bit differently is kind of our go-to thing that we talk about. But living differently means something different for everyone. And that's something we're continuing to learn as we go forward with this. Yeah.
And, and I love what you guys are all about there. I love that concept. And I think for me, it's about living intentionally, right? It's not... The last thing you want to be is a barnacle that just kind of shifts through the sea and lands where you land because you're just floating along. You want to live intentionally. So the guy that, has the job because he's got lots of hobbies to afford, that's wonderful. I mean, that's his intention, and that's what he wants to do. I feel really bad for folks who get themselves into jobs that they hate, and they just do it out of necessity. And I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But it's such a lot of time to spend in life that, gosh, you only get one trip around. So you want to make it a good one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move into the next question. We wanted to talk a little bit about, and I don't really know this story, but I remember you mentioned to me the one time that you and your husband kind of moved to Charlotte a while back and kind of had a similar kind of starting over journey, just like Miranda and I did. So if you can talk a little bit about that and kind of how that all went down and what your feelings and thoughts were at the time, that would be really cool. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So when I heard you guys had done that, all I could remember was us doing that, which was, gosh, I would say probably 14 years ago now. But that was definitely our leap of faith time. And now looking back, it probably should have scared the heck out of us. But when it was happening, we had such a peace about it all. And we just knew that we were on the path that we were supposed to be on. And of course, we prayed a lot about it, and faith is at the center of our marriage. And we had been married for a couple of years and living in Atlanta. And I mentioned that Brian was a race car driver. And so, he was kind of at that point in his career where he needed to try to move into NASCAR or Indy, or one of the, like, at the time, I think it was like the Busch series for NASCAR, which is like the lead-in series or truck series or whatever that may be. And so we just kind of talked about it. And, we really had two choices. We could either live in Charlotte where NASCAR was, or we could live in Indy with the, Indy 500, where the Indy 500 is. And I'm a Southerner, so I just said, we are not moving north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Nice.
So, yeah, we picked Charlotte. And then, once we kind of started talking about this move, it just seemed like everything started to fall into place. It felt like God was just opening every door, and he practically laid the red carpet out for us. And he is an amazing provider. When you're walking in his path, it's amazing what happens. And just a few things that had kind of happened. One was the condo that I owned before we were married. It happened to be in a condo complex that was not selling. In fact, I think about 5 years ago, it got bulldozed and they built a huge high rise there. But it wasn't selling. And I literally had a renter within a few days of kind of us talking about this. Somebody that was new to Atlanta, didn't have anywhere to live, was living out of an extended stay hotel. And kind of a long story, but long story short, I said, hey, what would you think about, you could live in my condo, and I want to move to Charlotte anyway, and you just pay rent and I'll cover the utilities and that kind of thing. And it worked out great. And then he ended up buying my condo 6 months later, which I think was the second condo to actually sell in that entire place. So what an amazing blessing that was. And then, kind of at the time, we needed some money to be able to not only move, but move into a new home and move to Charlotte. And Brian was offered a professional driving assignment for Toyota, which was 3 weeks long, which provided all the funds that we needed to move. So
That's
that
awesome.
was just amazing. Yeah. And it wasn't like he was getting these all the time. It was sort of intermittent. And he's one of those that, when you see those TV commercials that say this was filmed on a closed course with a professional driver, he's the guy that was
that's cool.
in the thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, those didn't come along all the time, and it just happened to come along right at the perfect time. And then I was leaving a good paying job at the agency. I was basically saying, I'm going to rely solely on my freelance work for income, and leaving, benefits and a job and a salary. And we just did all these big life changes at one time, new home, new career. And then we got the big news. Like the first 2 weeks we were in the house, and we found out we were pregnant with our first child.
Oh, wow.
There's some timing for you.
Yeah. And, so much was happening that it seemed impossible on paper. Like, my best friend and business partner, she admitted later, she said, I was so scared for you guys. Like, I didn't know what you were doing. But, we knew that we were in God's plan, and we knew that very clearly. And we just kind of counted on him to work out the details, and he did. And, it doesn't mean that over the last, 14 years, we haven't had our challenges, because we certainly have. But I just think that when you're on the path that God has for you, it's just so much better than what you can ever imagine for yourself. So yeah, I can totally relate to what you guys did. And if you believe you're on the right path, then it'll work out.
Yeah, and that really resonates with us too, that at the time you said you were very at peace with the decision and it just felt right. And that is definitely what we experienced. We just kind of one day we're on a walk, we're like, I think we need to move. I think we need to stretch ourselves and push ourselves. And then I don't even know how many months later, we're moving to North Carolina, and it's been such an amazing change for us. Definitely. Just all the changes we did have just helped us grow immensely. Definitely, I love hearing that story. And you definitely touched on this, but I just wanted you to go maybe a little more in depth with the role faith plays in your life.
Sure.
And just you've talked about it a little bit, how God is gracious, and, just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, I love the Lord, and he just gives me so much strength and capacity for everything in life. And I just know that I can do anything with him. So, that's pretty cool. I always say that my faith is kind of like riding in first class your whole life. You still have to get on the plane, and you still have to experience the same turbulence that maybe the passengers and coach are going through. But there's just a comfort that comes in knowing that, the same man that formed the heavens and earth is for me. He's for me and everything that I do. And that's just a truly comfortable, wonderful place to be. It gives me a tremendous amount of confidence. And so I've just seen him just show up in such a big way for us, and he always does. And so, faith is a huge part of everything for me and my husband and our family. And we hope that our kids will learn that too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool what you said, just about, kind of living in his will, and, everything, working out. You can't guess at every circumstance. Like, I'm sure you guys didn't know you were going to get pregnant 2 weeks into moving in.
No.
So that's something that's like, oh man, but it's definitely encouraging, I think, for me to hear, and for Miranda and I to hear that, because there's definite times where we're like, okay, we're in the right place. Like, God has us where he wants us, but then there's other days where we're just like, oh man, like, how are we going to make this work financially? Like, how's this all going to work out? But then we question and say, is this where God wants us to do? And we feel very, very much like we're in the right place. So that's just encouraging. I really like how you said that. I think that was really cool.
Great. Well, and I can give a shout out to a book that really meant a lot to me. It's called Jesus Entrepreneur. And it just talks about the biblical principles and how Jesus really was like the ultimate entrepreneur, and how, faith is so much about relying on the unseen, obviously. But it says that, we kind of, as humans, we kind of look for things at the eye level. We look for things in the obvious places. And kind of the way God works is that he puts the things that you need in places you never expect. Kind of like the key that goes to the gate. You expect it to be like near the gate, under a rock somewhere, but God will put it up on the roof. And it's just and that's from the book, but that's just an example. And that's what I love about God. He's just so amazing. Like, I'm surprised a lot, but I'm not surprised a lot, because I'm always just going, he's just amazing. Like, he's organizing again. And, the book is no different. This book is no different, because I just all along have felt like I needed to do it, and that it was part of my path. And I thought, well, if it's going to be helpful to others and be somewhat of a success, it'll be, God will bless it. And that's just the way it is. So
that's cool. I just, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just said, I think I end every sentence with so you might want to cut some of those out.
Oh no, you're good. I was just going to say, I wrote that, the book title down, because I had never heard of that. It sounds really interesting. So I'm going to look that up afterward and see if I can pick that up and read it. It sounds super absolutely. Interesting.
It is. And it's not a big book either. It's kind of like mine, it's not a big book. So
good. Those are the books I really like, because I can read them in one sitting. I'm a slower reader. It takes a lot for me to focus and sit there and read a book. I prefer Audible. Actually, I prefer listening to books while I'm walking, listening to them on like a little higher speed and kind of doing that. That's my way. Miranda can sit there and read a whole book in a few hours, even if it's a big book, which is very impressive. She's a very fast reader. Yes.
No, I love that. I'm a slow reader myself.
Anyway, we'll ask just a few questions here to finish up, Jenny. If you want to give us, our audience and our listeners, one piece of advice just to get a little bit more out of life, what would that one piece of advice be?
think the biggest thing that I learned in my 50 Coffees journey was I would suggest that folks find a way to be of value to other people. Think about how can you be the reason someone is more successful or doing better. Because with every new relationship in your community, you'll just find a much richer and more meaningful life for yourself. What it really boils down to and what really matters is that we're just all people in community with other people. It's just that simple. And, I've met so many incredible and unique people along the way. And really our differences are what make each of us beautiful. And so we just need to look for the good in one another. And there's always something good to find. I mean, that's the crazy thing is there's always something good to find. One of the things I love as an example is, do you ever notice how like a smile is contagious and it's so much fun? And I love to do this. This is something I love to personally do. I'll just be walking around and I will catch somebody's eyes and I'll give them the biggest smile and immediately they smile back. And it works every single time. Like there isn't one time when somebody has like looked away or not smiled or given me a dirty look, even though, they probably could. But when you see the best in others and you look for the common ground, instead of looking at what divides you, the result is kind of like a mirror. It just reflects back on us. And one of my favorite quotes that I wrote in 50 Coffees is, you get what you give, so give good stuff. And that's truly the best advice I can give anyone.
That's awesome. I love it. All right, Jenny. So where can people find you if they want to get more information about you, maybe more information about your book? I don't know if you had a website you wanted to share or if you just wanted me to share a link to your book. But yeah, that's up to you. What do you got?
Sure. So I've got a Facebook page, and I actually started that a couple years ago, which is neat because I had started with just my 50 community and 50 founding coffee people, and then just kind of added people over time. And then when I finally launched the book, it was ready to go. But it's My 50 Coffees. So facebook.com/My 50 Coffees is the Facebook. I'd love for you to join me there because I try to keep that. I try to add content there as I go along. And then if you are a Kindle Unlimited member, you can read the book for free right from Amazon, or you can buy the Kindle and print version on Amazon too. So, and I do have a 50 Coffees. It's just a little microsite. It's my50coffees.com. But the reason for it is because I provide a journal PDF that if anybody wants to do their own 50 Coffees journey, it's kind of it really is simple, but it's what I use throughout my journey. And it's kind of how I kept track of who I met and who introduced me to who and all that good stuff. So it's available and it's free for anybody that wants it out there.
Awesome. That is so cool, Jenny. Thank you for being on our podcast. Thank you for sharing all about that. We were really happy to talk about your book and all that stuff. We enjoyed this podcast a lot. It was really fun.
Good.
So thank you
too.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you spending your time with us.
Oh, thank you guys. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share with others. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You got it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to that episode with Jenny. Miranda and I both hope you enjoyed it very much. We hope you got something out of it. We know we got a lot out of it just listening to her talk about her book and her faith and all of that stuff. We were so happy to have her on. Please, if you could, go to iTunes, leave us a review. And then if you found out about this show on Facebook, if you saw my post, go ahead and share that. Let other people know about Freedom Cast. Let people know how awesome this podcast is. We just thank you so much for your time. We thank you for stopping by and for spending a little bit of your listening time with us today. As you go forth, please have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. We are going to be editing and putting together an episode to be announced for the Friday before Christmas, so stay tuned for that. But we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And stay frosty, friends.